Welcome to e-Adhyayan.commerce. Today we will talk about one of the basic topic of fundamental economics, that is utility. We will talk about the definition of utility. Then we will move on to different approaches of measuring the utility, and then we will also talk about total utility and marginal utility and the relationship between them. So let's get started. So, if we have to define utility, we can say it is the ability or power of the goods or services to satisfy the needs of the consumer. That is, the ability or power of the goods or services that it can satisfy the needs or desires of the consumers is called utility. Now, we will move on to the factors of utility. Okay. If we talk about the factors of utility, the first comes is it is subjective. You see, an apple. If I go and buy an apple, that can give utility to me, but for you it might not give utility because you do not like apple. So it is subjective because it varies from one person to another. Let's note it down. It varies from person to person. That something might give me the utility, but the same thing will not give you the utility. So it is subjective, it varies from person to person. The next factor is it is determined by urgency. Okay, you see, you had a phone, but suddenly it got broken. So now you urgently need another phone. So whatever the phone you are going to have will give you a high amount of utility because you do not have any phone at this moment. So it is determined by the urgency. That is how urgently it is needed. Okay. If it is highly needed by you, then it will definitely give you high utility. Now, if we talk about the third point, it is that it's different from usefulness. You see, if someone goes and buys alcohol, now that alcohol can satisfy him, that alcohol can give him utility, but that thing will not be useful for him because it is a harmful substance. So something that can give you utility doesn't always mean will be useful to you. So we will write it down that something can provide utility or satisfaction but doesn't always be useful. That it can give you utility or satisfaction, but it doesn't always mean that it will be useful for you. So it is different from usefulness. Okay. So these are the factors of utility. Now we move on to the approaches of measuring the utility. Okay. You see, there are two approaches of measuring utility. First one is Cardinal Approach. We also call it quantitative approach. Here we are assigning a numerical value to the satisfaction that is derived to us. So let's write it down. Numerical value. Okay. The next one is ordinal approach. It is a subjective approach. Here we are ranking or comparing between the alternatives to rate our utility. So here we will write down rank or compare. Okay, now we will learn in detail about these two. Okay, now if we talk about the cardinal approach, it says cardinal approach measures the utility by assigning a numerical value. So when we are having utility, we are denoting it by assigning a numerical value to it. So we can say that the cardinal approach is a quantitative approach, since we can measure it by assigning a numerical value, so we can quantify it. Okay, and the units of the values, that is the numerical values, the units of the numerical values are called utils. Okay, so it is very important to note that the units of these values are called utils. Now let's talk about an example. Okay, say you are eating pizza. So before having the first slice, the idea of the pizza is in your mind, and also the fact that you are hungry. So after having the first slice, you are thinking that you have 30 utils. Okay, by the second slice you are going to have, now you are no longer as hungry as you were before consuming the first slice. Also that your hunger is less. Also the fact that the first time when you have tasted it, it already satisfied you to an extent. So by the second slice, the utility drops to, the utils drops to 20 utils. Okay, after consuming the second slice, now you say you have 20 utils of utility from that second slice. When you are going to have your third slice, you are already full by then, because you already have 2 slices. Okay, so by the third slice, the utility will drop to, let's say, 15 utils. Okay, so here we can see by every slice the utility is quantified by assigning a numerical value to each of them. Okay, that is the utils. In the first slice it was 30 utils, by the second slice it became 20 utils, and by the third slice it became 50 utils. Okay, so this is how we measure the utility in cardinal approach. This approach is promoted by Alfred Marshall. Okay, economist Alfred Marshall. And the measuring tool of cardinal approach is marginal utility analysis. We know that it is a utility derived from consuming one additional unit. So by marginal utility analysis tool, we can measure the utility derived to us in cardinal approach. Okay, so this is the detailed understanding of the cardinal approach. Next we will move on to the ordinal approach. Okay, now if we talk about ordinal approach, it says ordinal approach measures utility by ranking or comparison. So here, since no values or numbers are involved, it is completely dependent on our judgment that how we will rank or compare between the utilities as per, between the commodities as per their utility. So we can say ordinal approach is a subjective approach. Since we are judging or we are ranking, ordering or comparing, so it is completely upon us and there are no numbers or values involved. So it is a subjective approach. Okay, now you see the approach is promoted by Hicks and Allen, economics Hicks and Allen. Now, if I have to give an example of this, let's say there are three shops. Shops A, Shop B and Shop C, three of them selling biryanis. Now, after consuming the biryani from all these three shops, you said that the biryani of the shop A was very good. Okay. After consuming the biryani of shop B, you said it is bad. And after consuming the biryani of shop C, you said it is medium. You see, there are no numerical values involved in this, just your own judgment that how you admire those biryanis. Since you can see that you have said it is very good, the biryani of shop A, very bad about the biryani of shop B, and the biryani of shop C was medium to you, you can rank that the biryani of shop A should be at number 1 because it was a very good biryani as per you, and the biryani of shop C comes in the second position because you said it was medium for you, and the biryani of shop B is at the last because you said it is very bad. So it is completely based on your judgments how you rank them. Okay, so this is the ordinal approach. Now, if we see the measuring tool of ordinal approach, it is indifference curve analysis. That is, we all know the curve that shows the combination of commodities that gives same level of satisfaction to the consumer. Okay, so this is the detailed idea about ordinal approach. Okay, now we will talk about core components of cardinal utility. The first one is marginal utility. Marginal utility is the utility derived from consuming one additional unit of a commodity. Okay, so the utility that we are deriving from consuming one additional unit. If we can see the formula of it, it says marginal utility equals to change in total utility divided by change in quantity consumed. So it is a change that has been observed in total utility due to the change in quantity consumed. Another formula is that marginal utility at nth unit will be equal to total utility at nth unit minus total utility at n minus 1 unit. Okay, so these are the formulas of marginal utility, and this is the idea about marginal utility. Okay, now we move on to total utility. Another core component of cardinal utility is total utility. Okay, it is the sum total of marginal utilities of consuming units of a commodity, or it is the sum of total satisfaction that is derived from consuming units of a commodity. Let's break it down. It is the sum total of marginal utilities. Say you are consuming units of a commodity. So every time you are consuming the units, let's say 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units, 4 units, every time you are consuming units, there is a marginal utility for each of the units that you have consumed. Now, if you sum them up, then it will give you total utility. The same thing is simplified and said here that it is the sum of total satisfaction, that you have consumed all the units and the total satisfaction that is derived to you is called total utility. Okay. The formula of total utility will be very simple, sum of marginal utilities. Okay, so this is the idea about total utility and the core components of cardinal utility as well. Next, we will understand the relationship between marginal utility and total utility. Okay, now we will understand the relationship between total utility and marginal utility. It is one of the most important topics in this chapter. Okay, in order to understand the relationship between two utilities, we have to take a practical example that we have taken here. Now you will see that a graph is presented here. With increasing units consumed, we will see that how utility increases or decreases, both total utility and marginal utility. Okay, the horizontal axis is denoted with units and the vertical axis is denoting utility. Okay, so let's start. Say we are consuming apples. Okay, so after the consumption of first apple, your marginal utility is 10. So at this point, when the marginal utility is 10 at the first unit, the total utility will also be the same, 10. Now on the subsequent unit, your marginal utility decreases. Okay, because there is a law that the more you will consume, the more the marginal utility will drop. Okay, so in the second unit, it has been dropped from 10 to 8. Now the total utility is 18. Okay, in the third unit, it drops further. Now it is 4. But the total utility is 22 because it is always summing up. It's always the sum of marginal utilities. Okay, in the fourth unit, when you are consuming the fourth unit, the marginal utility has been reduced to 0. At this point, you are having no utility at all. Now the total utility will be the same because we are adding nothing as marginal utility. Finally, when you are consuming the fifth unit, your marginal utility drops further. Now it becomes negative. It becomes -4. But when the marginal utility becomes negative, it will also impact the total utility. Now the total utility will be 18. So this is the chart about the units consumed and their marginal utility and total utility. Now we will fix the same data into the graph. Okay, after the consumption of the first unit, the marginal utility is 10, so as the total utility. So after the consumption of the first unit, the marginal utility and total utility starts from the same place, that is here. Okay, it's the same point where the total utility will increase also. Okay, now in the second unit, after the consumption of the second unit, the marginal utility becomes 8. Okay, so it will be somewhere at here. Okay, so it's 8. Now after the consumption of the third unit, it becomes 4. So it will be somewhere here. Okay, after the consumption of the fourth unit, the marginal utility becomes 0. So it will be on the axis here. Okay, and after the consumption of the fifth unit, the marginal utility becomes negative. It becomes -4. So it will be someplace here. Now if we have to draw the marginal utility curve from here, it would look like this. From there to here, then from there to there. Okay, now after this we will draw the total utility curve. Okay, it was also starting from 10, So at first unit, it will also be here. After the second unit, it will be at 18. So the second unit, it will be somewhere here. Okay. After the third unit, the total utility becomes 22. So it will be in the place somewhere here. Now, after the consumption of the fourth unit, since there is no marginal utility, zero marginal utility, the total utility will be at the same place. Okay, so 22 again. And finally, after the consumption of the fifth unit, the total utility will decline and it will be at 18. So after the fifth unit consumed, it will be somewhere in the here. So now if we draw the total utility curve, it would look like this. Now from this, some instances will come from which we will understand the relationship between total utility and marginal utility. This is the graph, but with the instances, we will understand the relationship between them. The three instances by which we will be understanding the relationship between total utility and marginal utility. First is A, instance A. You see the marginal utility is positive. Okay, so when the marginal utility is positive, the total utility is increasing. See, when the marginal utility is more than 0, the total utility is increasing. At instance B, when marginal utility is 0, you see, after the consumption of fourth unit, the marginal utility becomes 0. At that point, the total utility is at its peak. That is, the total utility is maximum at B point. And finally, at C point, when marginal utility is negative, then the total utility falls. So these are the three instances that helps us to understand the relationship between total utility and marginal utility. Okay. I hope I have helped you understand utility, different approaches of it, marginal utility and total utility, and their relationship in a very simple way. That's all for now. I hope we will meet in another video. Thank you.